I think that I have a tendency of muting my, maybe muting some of my emotional responses to change and being averse to that. And so I throw myself into the task at hand. So at school, I have assignments, I have things that I can do. So I throw myself into that. Or a new work position, I'll throw myself into that. So I guess I handle change by throwing myself into the clearest tasks that are ahead of me so that I can feel like I'm accomplishing something, so that I have some stability in an otherwise unstable situation. I think that I handle change well. I enjoy change. Recently I've been thinking that there are two kinds of people in the world. There are people who like to stay home and find value in growing deep roots, and there are adventuring people. And there is not more value in one or the other, but I would like to be an adventuring person. And so I like experiencing new things and I guess being surrounded by some level of change. And so I don't feel emotionally averse to change, even though probably there is some aversion, maybe subconsciously. And so if our metric of wellness in the question, how well do you handle change, is kind of emotional continuity and feeling self-actualized or something along those lines, then I think that I handle change well. My coping mechanisms of finding a task to do, building relationships in that context, and so forth, work well. Like I stay steady through change, and I enjoy change.
I remember the first few times driving up, there's like 4 gentlemen that were always consistently in the parking lot smoking prior to the worship service. I remember telling my wife, I said, who's the pastor of this church that lets people like smoke on campus, right? And I just thought, what's going on? And then right after the service was over, those same guys would be outside smoking again. And one day, after I'd been there a few months, I asked the pastor, I said, hey, Dale, what's up? What's with these guys, right? I mean, why are they smoking? What's going on? And I kind of more said it like, how's this happening, right? And so then he told me, he said, Ken, if you knew their stories, it'd be amazing. Their stories are amazing, right? You just have to know them, right? And so slowly with time, I started getting to know them, right? And I, set a time, I had kind of a morning breakfast with Demetrio, and I talked with him, and he shared with me his life, and how he had been near homeless, and he was selling flowers on the street corner, and the pastor and the elder came and met him on that street corner and invited him into church, and he had been coming to church. And how another gentleman was like a Satanist, and another gentleman was kind of really haunted with the memories of his time during the war. And one by one, I met these individuals and became friends with them, and I realized, that these were just beautiful, beautiful people. So initially, I thought, seeing that I'm a physician, maybe I should run a anti-smoking clinic or a plan, or those smoking cessation classes. And so I started looking into that, and something just kind of held me back from it. And now looking back, I believe that God was holding me back. And I said, well, no, this is how I can contribute, and I was really thinking I should do this. And then one day, those guys weren't showing up anymore. And I went to them and I said, Demetria, what's going on? How come you guys aren't smoking out there? And he said, Ken, God just took it away from me just like that. He says, I don't have the desire to smoke anymore. And then I went and asked the other guy, I says, hey, why aren't you smoking out there? He says, I'll tell you what, I have no desire to smoke. And every single one of them had the same story that like God just took that desire right out from them. And I realized that, God did not need me like to do his work. And I think that he understood that in my pride that I would take the credit for myself, and that he said, Ken, I just want you to step aside and just kind of watch me work. And the 4 or 5 years that I was at the church, that was really the lesson that I learned, that God really taught me was, you don't have anything to offer these people at this church. I know that maybe you can preach or you can do something, but you know what? I just want you to sit down, and I want you to learn, and I want you to worship me. And that's what I learned. I learned that, we may think that we have so much to offer God and we have it all figured out, but time and time again, I've found out that God knows what he's doing, right?
I would say that between like March and July in particular, but really quite frankly, even into the present, and it's towards the end of September right now, I have had people reach out to me on social media, particularly white individuals from all over the country, people I do not know, have never met in my life, write me on Facebook. A woman from Montana wrote me and was like, I have never heard anybody present the topic of race in this way, with this language, with this perspective. And now I actually do believe that police brutality is a problem. I really do think that we have a race issue in our country, and I previously did not think that. And I think that when I read that message, at that point, that's when I felt like, oh, God really is using you to change minds. Like, he's actively using you to change hearts. And I think for so many, people feel like, man, that's not working. So the work that I'm going to focus on is legislation, or the work I'm going to focus on is, in communities or institutions or what have you. And they don't think that certain people's minds can be changed. And so they don't work for that. And I'm never going to tell people that that's what you have to do. I feel like you have to kind of find where God is leading you. But in this period, I have seen God show me, like, I have given you the skills and the ability to be able to get white people to genuinely rethink their understanding and their assumptions about conversations of race. And to be able to affect that kind of change, to me, has just been really eye-opening. I did not know that. I didn't expect that at all. And it's very humbling. And it's just very invigorating. It causes me to be like, I've got to say more. I've got to teach more. I've got to write more. I've got to get more out there so that people from all walks of life can begin to understand this differently. Because I don't feel like race is a black-white thing that only black people need to understand and then work for. Race literally exists on the continent of Asia. It exists on the continent of Africa. It exists in Europe. It exists literally all over the globe. Now, its manifestations look much different, but the reality is that its residue is still around. And so my thing is, it's like, man, any way that something that I said or something that I wrote or preached or anything like that can cause so many people from so many different walks of life to be able to understand their own context and to understand their own experiences and to see, man, this is why I was treated this way. Man, this is what God believes. This is what God intended. Man, now I see and understand differently. But that's just my heart. That if I could put my heart into a box, I just feel like that encompasses everything that I love. And I just love creating light bulb moments for people when I say something or they read something I wrote and they feel like a light bulb came on, and it's like, man, now I understand. Before I didn't really get it. Now I get it. Nothing and nobody changes on their own. And so either God is going to change you or he's going to use you to change something else. But it's always some kind of external energy. And that kind of work is difficult. It's not pretty work. It's laborious work. But I also feel like it's the most rewarding when you hear people respond and say, wow, you changed my mind on a perspective. Like, I never thought about it like this, or I never read this story from this perspective, or man, you really changed the way I look at things, or Claudia, you changed actual curriculum at school, or Claudia, you changed this community, right? Like, I feel like hearing that kind of affirmation and confirmation just lets you know that whatever work for change that you are doing is worth it. The world as it currently exists is not how God intended. And because of that, the world requires and needs change. It needs alternatives. It needs help in aiding it along to actually become what God truly intended for it to be. And so that means that we have to be the agitators. Like, we have to be the impetus, the energy that produces people, communities, institutions, entities to change and shift and evolve and grow so that they do become what God intended for them to be. Because nothing changes without some kind of inertia, some kind of energy, some kind of outside external initiative that is pushing for it to make that kind of a change.
So one of the things I think this series does really well is highlight the complexity that is the human story. I think a lot of times I want to put people in a box. Oh, you're a Democrat, this is what you mean, this is what you believe, this is how you live it out. Oh, you're an atheist, this is what this looks like. What I learned through this journey is that Seventh-day Adventists are much like every other kind of human being out there. They're complicated. There's a lot of different stories. There's a complexity. Sometimes to the outside, it might even seem like you're coming at it from two different angles. There's competing views. And this is true of our church. This is true of my experience as well. And so I think this series will be good for people to realize that it's okay to be different. It's okay to ask questions. It's okay to view the world from a different lens than the one that maybe you were always handed as a child. That maybe even one of the most beautiful things about life is the ability to enter someone else's story, someone else's life, and see life through their perspective.